Welcome to That One Show with Brian Combs. I have a guest today that is a man that wears many hats. Mr. Andrew Grevas is a writer and journalist from Cincinnati, Ohio. He is the founder of various websites, including Horror Obsessive. He's also a former wrestling journalist, a current paranormal investigator, and has a fantastic new book out called Horror in Haddonfield: The Untold Stories of the Halloween, and it covers all 13 films in the franchise. It features some essays and some interviews with cast and crew to help make those movies happen. Andrew, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate you.
Um, so your book come up on one of my feeds on X, and I looked into it and started following you because I too am a huge horror fan, specifically the Halloween franchise. The original in '78 is my favorite horror film of all time. I rewatch it annually every October. You also had covered wrestling, so I'm assuming you are, or at least at one time was a big wrestling fan. So you and I have those things in common. Introduce yourself quickly and tell us a little bit about the book and what made you want to write about that particular franchise of Halloween.
Again, I appreciate it. Lifelong horror fan. The first time I saw Halloween, I was 7 years old. My cousin and I, we snuck down to his basement. His parents had a recorded VHS tape. The kids at home might not know what VHS are, but back in our day, we watched VHS tapes, and we went down to his basement, watched Halloween, and I've been hooked on horror ever since. As far as the pro wrestling goes, here Cincinnati, Ohio used to be and still is a hotbed for independent wrestling. Got to work with a lot of the greats who are on TV even still today. I like to joke that a former WWE and AEW champion used to sleep on my couch. The wrestling fans will probably be able to figure out who that is. And I'm just really excited to be here to talk about horror in Haddonfield. It's my love letter to the franchise that made me the horror fan that I am today.
So you interview various uh, people that's intricate in 13 films, whether they were behind or in front of the camera. Um, when you started out planning for this book, did you have a long list of folks you wanted to talk to about it?
I did. At first, I didn't think the book was going to be as interview heavy as it is. I kind of saw myself writing more essays. But the very first interview that I did was with Stacey Nelkin from Halloween 3. And I'll be
Yes.
honest with you, I had a blast talking to her. And
Nice.
she got me going. She had me motivated. She was telling me all these cool stories. And when I hung up the phone with her, I remember saying to my wife, I need to do more interviews than I thought. Because at first I was thinking, well, maybe I'll just try to get one for each film. That'll be kind of a good thing. But after I talked to Stacy, I was like, nope, this book needs to be all about the cast and crew. And the race was kind of on at that point. Dan Ferens, who wrote Curse of Michael Myers, was my second interview. Another great experience where Dan and I just hit it off. He's telling me all these great stories, and I had the itch at that point.
I'm glad you mentioned Halloween 3 because when it was released, it wasn't necessarily well received because obviously it doesn't really feature Michael Myers other than a cameo on a TV screen. But as time has passed, it's, I think, kind of has been reclaimed by horror fans. It may be my second or third film in the entire franchise, and I love it. I think it has such a good uh, look and feel as far as autumn and the Halloween season goes. Uh, are you fond of that film?
It's number two for me after the original.
Nice,
I'm
nice.
with you. 1978 just cannot be beat. That is a perfect horror film. But after that, Season of the Witch is next up for me, followed closely by Halloween 4.
That's mine is Halloween 4 second and Season of the Witch is third. So we've got the same top three, just a little bit different order in two and three there. So great minds, great
Great
minds.
minds.
Um, let me ask you this: Do you what are particular what are you a fan like when it comes to horror? Is slasher your particular favorite genre, or
I watch more slashers than anything. I've always had a soft spot for slashers. I can put on a random Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street or any of those classic slashers just on a Tuesday night if I've got nothing to do. Those are movies I've just grown up watching. But I'm somebody who likes all horror. There's not really any subgenre that I don't like, but I think I just have a soft spot for slashers because that's what I grew up on.
Yeah. I actually, the first horror movie I ever remember watching was the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and I was probably around five, way, way, way too young. But I was hooked. So I then started going down the rabbit hole as the years went by. I then watched the Friday the 13th movies, and I came late to the Halloween franchise, even though it's ended up being my favorite of those big three, being Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street. Michael Myers to me is the ultimate boogeyman. Uh, and I just have a soft spot, even like the quote unquote lesser grade ones, be it some of the latter ones that, or even the Rob Zombie remakes or the new ones. I can watch any of them and find something that I like in them.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And to me, Michael is the horror icon. Chapter one of the book, I try and hopefully I do a good job, but what I was trying to do was set out why he is the horror icon and why we are so obsessed with him. And I think a lot of things that were happening in the real world in the 70s made Michael scarier because he was a fictionalized version of real world fears. And he's just kept going from there. And when we don't have the shape, we react differently. When Halloween Ends tried to put somebody else into the role of the shape, we reacted. We didn't feel comfortable with that. I like Halloween Ends, but I understand why people didn't. I understand why people had a problem with a new character trying to step into the shoes of the shape. Michael is the icon, though, for a whole lot of reasons. And that's something that I really hope my book does is just show why Halloween is so important to the genre and to film in general because it transcends horror. There are people who saw Halloween in 1978 in the drive-in, and then their kids grew up watching the Jamie Lloyd films, and then their kids grew up watching H2O and Resurrection, and now the next generation is watching the Blumhouse films. Halloween,
Absolutely.
yeah, it literally transcends generations.
Absolutely. I mean, we're almost 50 years into the franchise at this point, and I'm sure we've not seen the end of it.
Nope,
There's
absolutely
still
not.
money to be made, so if there's money to be made, there will be movies to be made.
Absolutely.
Um, can you give me maybe just two or three of your favorite kills from the franchise?
Ooh, I always go back to the first film. Bob, that one
Yes,
gets me every single time.
absolutely.
It's just so iconic. And then to give you another one, Halloween H2O, Adam Arkin's kill, that one's just become legendary in my mind over the years, partially because it's so animated, but it's also Chris Durand was just a phenomenal Michael Myers, very intense, very scary. And at that point in H2O, the action's really picked up, and Lori just no longer feels safe now that her significant other is dead, and that kill just has a lot of significance.
Two I'll mention real quick. In Halloween 2, the nurse, he pretty much
Mm.
bulls.
Hmm.
And then the massacre that he just mows through all the firefighters in the new trilogy
Yeah,
is absolutely just crazy.
it is.
He's almost like a superhero at that point.
He is. I mean, Michael is indestructible, especially Halloween Kills. In that film, they really kind of play with our identity of our concept of who Michael Myers is, because he seems supernatural, or like a superhero, like you said. Like he seems completely different than we're accustomed to seeing him.
Yes, and obviously you mentioned the shape, Michael Myers being integral in how great these movies are, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention the two characters with whom, if they didn't exist, I don't think the franchise would work nearly as well. That's obviously Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode and Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis. They do some heavy lifting in their own ways in some of the films. You want to touch on either of those characters real quick?
Yet you don't have a franchise without those two characters. For as iconic as Michael is, you need somebody to play off of Michael Myers. And the Laurie Strode and Dr. Loomis characters do that perfectly. When they're together, the series is at its best. But even when they're separate, we don't have Laurie and Halloween 4, 5, or 6, but we've still got Loomis there. And then we've got Lori and H2O and Resurrection, but we don't have Loomis and so on and so forth. But we need those characters to kind of root Michael back to his past and to have that solid foil for him to play off of. They are iconic in their own ways, and I just couldn't imagine this franchise without either of those characters.
Yeah, you would think that local law enforcement maybe would start listening to Dr. Loomis if he warns them that the Michael's on his way to their town and it's not going to be good for anyone.
You would think so, like all the way back to 78. Why aren't they listening to this guy? He knew what he was talking about.
Especially in part four. And
Oh, yeah.
part four, I love the ending.
Hmm.
Are you a fan of the ending with the
It
return of the original clown costume and all that?
it's the biggest shocker in the franchise, and we're arguably one of the best endings in horror history. Nobody saw that coming. It's downright creepy, and it's something we get into in the book quite a bit. Dwight Little and Alan McElroy, the director and writer of Halloween 4, say that was their idea from the beginning. They knew where they were going. That ending was deliberate, and they felt that they were handing whoever came next this gift of now you have Jamie Lloyd taking over the family curse. Do with it what you want. Obviously, Halloween 5 went a different direction, and they chose to set that gift down and do something different. But I can't really blame them because it would have been tough to see a cute 10, 11-year-old little girl killing a bunch of people on the screen in the 80s.
Right, right. Did you try to get Paul Rudd to talk
Oh
about
yeah.
it?
Oh yeah, I tried. I wish he would have, but he's
I
probably
guess
the
he may,
biggest
yeah,
he's the biggest star in the world.
he may not have as fond memories of that movie as like you and I and other fans of the franchise do.
Yeah, I've heard mixed stories. I've heard that over the years he's kind of come around where he's a little bit easier on it than he used to be, but that would have been a huge get.
One of the things about the original that I love, and even though it was pretty much filmed in Pasadena, it just looks and feels like a late October Midwest day. Obviously, are you originally from Cincinnati?
My whole life.
Yeah, so I mean, it takes place in Illinois, which is borders Ohio. So you're very familiar with the look and feel of that time of year in the Midwest. I'm from Kentucky. Some folks consider us South, some Midwest. We're kind of, I guess, a bastard child and don't belong to anyone. But you understand where I'm coming from. It's amazing to me that they were able to capture that look and feel in Southern California.
Yeah, I've always been impressed by that. And some of the later sequels that shot in Salt Lake City, they to varying degrees of success. I would say The Curse of Michael Myers in Salt Lake City did the best job of capturing that autumn feel. But you're right, Pasadena looks like my neighborhood. I always say that where I live, I'm 20 minutes from Kentucky, 20 minutes from Indiana, and I feel like I'm in Haddonfield. I'm removed from the city. Everybody's got a little bit of property. The streets get really dark at night. There's that sense of community. Where I live feels like Haddonfield. And
Yeah,
the fact that Pasadena did such a good job, I will always tip my cap to John Carpenter for that.
yeah, I'm a huge fan of the city of Cincinnati. I never, I don't ever remember a time in which I didn't root for the Reds or the
Nice.
Bengals. My dad raised me, and maybe Child Protective Services maybe should have looked into that. Him raising me to be a Reds and a Bengals fan. I don't know. It's been a lifetime of misery for the most part. But also, my wife grew up in Cincinnati, so I have a soft spot for the city. She grew up in Norwood.
That's
Uh,
where I grew up, actually.
really?
Yeah,
Okay, nice.
I
I'll have
lived
to
in
tell her.
Norwood till I lived in Norwood till I was 26,
Yeah,
and then
I think she lived in Norwood till she was a teenager, so she
okay,
still
okay,
claims it as home.
yep. And then I moved to the west side of Cincinnati, so I'm closer to Indiana now. But actually, my sister still lives in Norwood. My brother still lives in Norwood. Got a lot of family there.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to touch on too, because we talked about the characters of Dr. Loomis and Laurie, but the score that John Carpenter composed to me is one of, if not the greatest scores of all time. And it's a very simple score. It's not, there's not, but it's just so effective. What are your thoughts on that?
It might be the best, and I'm continually amazed by how good of job Carpenter and Alan Howarth and everybody did in the sequels. They didn't change it too much from film to film, with the exception of Season of the Witch, which is drastically different. But little touches, like let's make it the same song sound a little bit more synth-like. They kept a good thing going with just small tweaks. And who doesn't know the music from Halloween? And it doesn't even have to be the main theme. Some of those other songs, some of those other musical cues, they're so iconic at this point that you just recognize it. You hear two or three notes and you're like, oh, Halloween. Even people who aren't massive horror fans know the music. That to me is a sign of success.
Yeah, we mentioned the reveal at the end of Halloween 4 and how shocking it was. I would say equally shocking is the opening of the original. We're watching a POV shot of the killer, and then all of a sudden you pull back and it's a little kid.
Yeah, it was hugely shocking. And I mean, nobody knew what we were getting into. Obviously, that was the first scene of the franchise, but it sets the tone. And, Sandy Johnson, who played Judith Myers, I was fortunate enough to interview her for the book. And it was cool to see how important that is to her. Her death scene kicked off this massive franchise that we're still talking about almost 5 decades later. It was a simple little scene where we see her on camera for what, 20 seconds, if that,
Right.
but it kicked everything off. And any theories that people have about the Halloween franchise usually derive from that. Is Michael, is he just criminally insane? Is he a sexually motivated killer? Any theory that somebody wants to come up with typically derives from that scene. You're right. It was absolutely shocking. It was perfectly done. The way that it's shot through the child's mask is just incredibly creepy. Bravo to John Carpenter and Deborah Hill because they kicked off a cinematic masterpiece with this scene that I don't know. I don't think it could have been done any better than what they did.
Another thing I love about the first one, and pretty much for the for entire franchises, is that there. There's not a lot of fat. I mean, most of them run around 90
No.
minutes, and as I get older, it seems like newer movies get longer and longer. You have quote unquote elevated horror films that's 2.5, 3 hours, which I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but uh, you that takes some investment. I can throw on a Halloween film and pass an hour and a half and be happy doing it.
Yep. No, I'm with you. Not every film is H2O short, which is like 80 minutes long total, but they are relatively short. The Blumhouse films are a little bit longer than an hour and a half, but not that much, not compared to like Conjuring 4 or some of these other films that are well over 2 hours that we're seeing. There's a huge change in the genre where these movies are going longer, but there's something to be said about a Halloween film that can just pack a tight punch into 90 minutes. And I appreciate that. I'm with you. Sometimes I just want to watch a short film on a Saturday afternoon and then get up and go about my day. And Halloween movies are great for that.
Uh, do you do very much physical media, like of movies you enjoy, or?
Yeah, I mean, I do collect, not as much as I want to, but I've got a pretty nice stack of Blu-rays going.
Yeah, I mean, if I like a movie, I want to be able to own it because I don't want to rely on the cloud to have it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I want to just be able to throw it on. And one of the cool things we do as a family, on Saturday nights through October try to watch a horror movie outside on a projector.
Nice.
And let me ask you this. I know you've obviously been busy writing and promoting the book. Have you had time to watch any horror movies that was released this year?
I did go to the theaters to see Conjuring 4. That came out my birthday weekend and my wife's birthday weekend. So we made a point to go see Conjuring. We're big fans of that series. I have not seen nearly as many horror movies this year as I want to, but I've been doing my best to keep up. Sinners was phenomenal. Absolutely love Sinners.
I love that film. It's one of my favorites of the year. Have
Yeah,
you had a chance to watch Weapons?
I did enjoy Weapons quite a bit. That's right up there. I think Sinners is probably my top for the year, but Weapons is pretty close.
Yeah, and I think that Zach Kreger that directed Weapons, he did a film a few years ago, Barbarian, that I really
Yep,
enjoyed. So I think he's 2 for 2 so far. So he's one to watch
he
going
is.
forward.
Absolutely. Barbarians was phenomenal.
So let's talk about this real quick. Let's touch on paranormal investigating. So
Okay.
from your bio, I think you and your wife do that together. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's something my wife has always been into. We got together over 14 years ago, and it was something she told me she did. I had never really even thought about it. I've always been somebody who likes horror movies, but she started showing me these paranormal TV shows. And at first, I was real skeptical, and I was like, I don't know. The next thing you know, I found myself really into it, and I'm watching all these shows with her. And then she tells me, she's like, we can go out and do this stuff. And it turned into this obsession for the two of us where every birthday and Christmas, I was buying her a new piece of paranormal investigating equipment. So we've got REM pods and everything else. And I laugh because we carry this giant toolbox around full of ghost hunting equipment. And everybody thinks it's tools, but no, it's tons of ghost hunting equipment. But then it became a thing for her and I to do. It's like, well, let's make a trip down to Louisville and go to Waverly Hills, or let's go to Alton, Illinois and go to the Mineral Springs. And it's something we both got into. And at first, it was just kind of a fun thing to do with my wife. But as it turns out, she's a really good paranormal investigator. And I've learned a few things over the years. And there's some local groups that we like to go with. I'll shout out Erie Excursions from the Cincinnati area. A couple of ladies started this business a few years ago and they organized these paranormal tours. So we actually just went to Indiana State Sanatorium with them a few weeks ago. And it's fun because we'll hang out with the group for a little bit and then we just kind of go off and do our own thing. And the ladies from Erie always laugh because normally a few people from the tour wind up following me and my wife around while we investigate. And it's fun, it's something we enjoy doing, but we're also very passionate about it.
Have you all caught anything uh, on camera or on audio?
Audio, yes. Camera, no. So Poasttown Elementary, which is in the Middletown area, Cincinnati, is probably the most active place that we've been to. Got some pretty good EVP sessions there, some pretty good. Actually, that's one place where we did get a little bit of video with orb sessions, but the audio to me that we got at Poasttown is still my favorite. Plain as day, we're in a room in the basement. We're talking to spirit. Apparently, the spirit of a janitor is in this basement, and we're not getting any activity. And my wife says, "All right, well, we're gonna get ready to go now. Are you sure you don't want to say hi before we leave?" Plain as day on our recorder, you hear hi. And that was the creepiest thing ever. We didn't notice until we got home that night. We're playing back through our evidence, but probably about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, we're sitting there listening to these recordings. So we hear it plain as day. Hi.
That's crazy, man.
It is.
What, when I was in college, a group of my friends went to a supposedly haunted location here in Kentucky, in which a an orphanage was flooded, and many people tragically lost their lives. Most of them kids in the 1940s. And I let them borrow my old, uh, actually, video camera, and by video camera I mean with the tape because digital didn't exist yet. And when they brought it back, I helped them, edit tape and everything like that. And we were playing it through, and they said they didn't hear anything when they were there. But as plain as day, they're talking. They said, "Is anyone here? Do you have anything to say?" You can hear a child say, "Help me," plain as day, and it was just so eerie, and just
It's
like
wild.
made my and they didn't hear it, on location, but it was on tape, plain as day.
That's the thing is most of the time you get your best evidence when you're playing it back later. A lot of people in the moment might feel disappointed when they're newer to investigating because nothing's happening and they just feel like they're going from room to room. But that's why whether it's camcorders or audio recorders, they're so important because you just don't know what you've captured until you get back and you play through your stuff. And I could sit here and be long-winded about it, but the more you do it, the more you're going to kind of pick up on tips and tricks to make sure that your recordings are good. You're not capturing any outside noise. But that to me is the most fun part is getting back home and playing through the evidence.
We'll get back to the book here as we get ready to close the episode. I have a quick question about wrestling for you. Can you
Mhm.
just give me one or two wrestlers that you really enjoyed, whether you grew up watching them or they're still going today?
Um, Probably my favorite wrestlers of all time, Roddy Piper, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, Bret Hart, and Mr. Perfect. Terry Funk is right up there too. That's like my all-time bests. As far
That
as
that
more, go ahead.
that tells me you were are like me and gravitated towards the heels more than you did the faces.
Yes, I always did. Always did. I
I
was
had
for
I had the pleasure of meeting Rowdy Roddy Piper one time, and he was so nice. And I got a picture of, and he insisted in the picture that it looked like I was punching him. So that's one of my all-time treasured possessions. But yeah, go ahead.
very nice. I had just dropped out of college, actually. I had gotten a fight with a journalism professor. Whole big long story, but I was taking my ball and going home, basically. And I went to a sports bar, sitting there drinking my sorrows away, and I ran into a buddy. And this was back when BW3s used to show wrestling pay-per-views in the BW3s, to date myself a little bit. Ran into a buddy of mine, and he heard me talking to the people that I was with about wrestling. Like, oh, this person's going to win. I bet this happens. And I'm just, wrestling fans that have been watching for a while typically can kind of predict things that are going to happen in the show. And this guy overheard me, and I knew him from high school. And he's like, "Hey, how you doing, man?" I told him I just dropped out of college for journalism, and he's like, "Do you want some work?" And next thing you know, I'm working in the professional wrestling industry, in the independents here in the probably about 2008, 2009, and had a blast. A lot of guys that are still on TV today, I had the pleasure of working with. Lots of great stories, and that is really what got my feet wet in the journalism industry was my work in professional wrestling.
Um, okay, so I did notice a few days ago, maybe a week or so ago, you had posted on X that you were going to really promote this book over the next few weeks, but then you were kind of going to go radio silence because you had something else in the pipe. Is that another book or?
Yeah,
Uh,
there will be another book that I'm working on. I'm not talking about that one too much yet, but tentatively planning on May of 2027 for book two.
N Nice. So we'll get ready to wrap up. I want you to go ahead and take these last couple minutes to touch on anything about the book that maybe we haven't so far in the interview, Andrew.
Thank you. Horror in Haddonfield, like I said earlier, it's got about 25 cast and crew interviews covering all 13 films. There's a lot of essays in the book, some cameos from other people in the industry. But whether you're a fan of the oldest Halloween movies, the Blumhouse movies, or something in between, this book's got something for everybody. And it's designed to be read out of order. If you want to start with the Rob Zombie movies and then bounce to the original three and then go to the Jamie Lloyd era, it's designed to be read that way. It's much like how the Halloween narrative is pretty splintered and fractured. My book is designed to be read in whatever order you want.
Nice. And it's pretty much available on all the usuals, correct?
Yes.
Bookstores and online.
Yep, it's out as of last week. It's out now, so you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, pretty much anywhere at this point.
I think you have something pretty cool coming up in Cincinnati in which they're actually going to screen Halloween and then you're going to do like a discussion and signing afterwards.
Yep, October 24th at the Esquire Theater, right near the University of Cincinnati. We'll be doing a screening of Halloween at 7:30, and then as soon as the film's over, there'll be a book signing and a Q&A. Very, very excited about that.
That sounds
This,
awesome. Just
yeah,
just the movie on the big screen itself would be worth the trip and price of admission. Little also getting to meet you and talk about the book and getting a copy signed. So yeah, if you're in and around the Cincinnati area, please check that event out.
yep. And we try to make tickets as cheap as possible. I believe it's $12 to get in.
No,
So,
you can't beat that, man. I mean, if you go watch a movie at any of the chains, it's going to cost you $15,
yep,
and you're
yep.
not even going to. And but you're what not you're going to see an all-time classic film right before Halloween. Get a book signed. So yeah, very much take the opportunity if you can make that screening and signing.
Yeah, very, very excited about that. Cincinnati area's got a lot of cool things. We did a book launch party in Norwood, Ohio, where I grew up. That's already passed, but that was a lot of fun. This podcast will be out by the time this already happens, but on the 17th of October at the Dent Haunted House here in Cincinnati. We're doing a book signing there. It's going to be real exciting. People will be lined up to get inside the haunted house, and there'll be a table right there for me, so you can buy a copy while you're waiting in line. But a lot of exciting stuff planned.
Awesome. Once again, I have been talking to Andrew Grevas. He's the author of the brand new book on the Halloween franchise, Horror in Haddonfield. Please pick it up, check it out. And if you are in and around the Cincinnati area, check out that awesome event that's going to be taking place soon, in which he screens the film and then signs his book afterwards. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. Very much appreciate it. And do you have anything you want to say in closing?
Thanks for the support. I have no marketing machine behind me, nothing like that, so all the success that this book has is just because average people like myself are like, hey, this book sounds cool. They told a friend and the word of mouth carried it through. So I appreciate everybody and all their support.
Uh, my pleasure. Thanks again.
And thank you.